I remind you that only certified lay delegates and clergy delegates with seat, voice, and vote, and those granted seat and voice are to be seated at the tables on the floor. All others should be seated in the guest area, which, of course, is on the same floor, but over there. So, if you checked your phones during lunch, please place all electronic devices on mute. I'll ask who's calling if I hear your phone ring. The chair recognizes the Reverend Deacon Ann Pilot, head teller for this convention.
Right, Reverend Sir. I have the results of the nomination and election. Election 1, Diocesan Executive Committee, Clergy Order. The 3 individuals who were elected are the Reverend Gary Eichelberger, the Reverend Pickett Wall, and the Reverend Suze Kate. Election 3, General Convention Deputies, Clergy Order. Those elected were the Reverend Canon Alan Bentrup, the Reverend Furman Buchanan, the Reverend Mike Flanagan, and the Reverend Mia McDowell. Election 4, those elected to the General Convention as General Convention Deputy Lay Order are Ms. Meredith Blocker, Ms. Angela Daniel, Dr. Nora Grimble, and Dr. Tommy Lee Watson, Jr. In election 6, those elected to the Ecclesiastical Board, Lay Order, Wes Summers. We do, however, have a runoff for election 7. So if the members of the DYLC will distribute ballots, Scantron sheets, and pencils to each person here. The runoff will be between Ms. Kirby Colson and Ms. Molly McDougal, excuse me. Molly Dougal, excuse me. Ms. Kirby Colson will be number 51A, and Ms. Molly Dougal will be 52A. Please vote for 1. I will. Again, Ms. Kirby Colson is 51A. Ms. Molly Dougal is 52A. Please vote for 1 with a pencil.
Was there a top?
There were 3. And you only vote for 1. Those were the 2 candidates.
Yeah.
And we added that other one. And the vote is now between those
Oh, I
2.
get it. Okay, I missed the edited bit.
Okay.
Shit, we got a dang tie with the 2 candidates.
Election 4, Ms. Blocker, Ms. Daniel, Dr. Grimble, and Dr. Watson. I will repeat this one more time. To vote for the University of South Board of Trustees, lay order, those nominated are 51A, Ms. Kirby Colson, and 52A, Ms. Molly Dougal. Please vote for one, and if you'll hold your ballots up when you've completed voting.
And in the surging order, in order, it's Jack Hardaway, Ray Coe, and Gary Eichel. But they're all
All right, so it would be Marie Cope and Gary Uckel. No, that's not right. Jack Hardaway and then Marie Cope, in that order. I don't know. Do you want me to announce the alternates for convention? Do you want me to announce them? You want to announce them?
I'll be happy to if you want me to, sure.
Doesn't matter to me. Okay. Right, let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't have anything. Okay.
In election number 3, alternate number 1.
In election number 3, I'm going to announce the alternates to convention. The first alternate is the Reverend Jack Hardaway. The second alternate is the Reverend Marie Cope. General Convention Deputies lay order alternates are Ms. Whitney Evans, first alternate, and second alternate is Ms. Mary Ann Park. Are there any ballots yet to be turned in? We've got one over here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ann. I didn't realize she was done. Congratulations to all who were elected, and our prayers are with those of you in the runoff. In a few minutes, we've scheduled time for table conversation related to our convention theme of Baptized for Life, just as we explored yesterday the practice of baptismal living through congregational ministries. Yesterday, we celebrated the learning and successes gained by St. Philip's Greenville through the Baptized for Life program. The Reverend Furman Buchanan highlighted congregational development centered on the power of the Eucharist in disciple formation, and we reflected on the importance of vocational discernment and reconciliation in the lives of the baptized. Before we get to the table conversations, however, I want to take a few minutes for you to hear from Mr. Jesse Schaefer of Averill Fundraising Solutions, and who serves as the Executive Director of the Centennial Campaign from Generation to Generation in the Church. This campaign is a direct result of Diocesan Executive Council's work to identify missional priorities as we make, equip, and send mature disciples of Jesus Christ across the diocese. As such, it is in important ways a discipleship campaign that focuses on areas that strengthen our witness among all generations at Gravitt Camp and Conference Center, Campus Ministries, and the Episcopal Church Home at York Place. The chair now recognizes Mr. Jesse Schaefer to give a summary and status update on the Centennial Campaign and his ministry among us. Thank you, Jesse.
Hello, everyone. Everybody hear me okay? Sorry about that. So, Reverend Susan Heath just gave me an anecdote that's going to help. It's very timely. She mentioned to me that when Billy Graham used to speak, he actually arranged for folks to be praying under the stage for his success every time he spoke. And I will tell you, we just heard St. Matthew this morning talk about the light of the world. Well, public speaking is not a light I generally run to, so pretend you're all under the stage and say a prayer for me, please. So people who do what I do for a living, they kind of divide projects like this into good ones and maybe not so good ones. And I just want to share a quick couple reasons why I think this is a really, really good one. First, any kind of a project like this that is really based on generating goodwill, it needs a lot of people of goodwill to make it work. And I've now sat down personally, privately, with about 43 folks, about 30 of whom are clergy members and 13 other leaders or so, and had conversations with many others as well. I'm just convinced that you guys are such good people of goodwill with such incredible levels of positivity and faithfulness. I know that is going to help. I can't put it on a spreadsheet for you, but I know it's going to be a vital ingredient in making this thing successful. The second thing is, and Bishop just alluded to this a bit, but another reason this project is so great is it makes so much sense from an outsider's point of view anyway, but now having spoken to so many of you, I think many of you believe this too. It makes so much sense for y'all to be doing these. I think I just said y'all. It's a breakthrough for me. Sorry. That was unplanned. I swear to the good Lord above. But at any rate, we alluded to some of the reasons why these projects make so much sense. And number one, the first thing I noticed was each of these three projects, Gravit, Canterbury, and York Place, 100% advance your mission to make, equip, and send mature disciples of Christ. And that's the first thing that any decent fundraising consultant is going to look for is, are you doing a fundraising campaign that's actually going to advance the core element of who you are and what your mission is? And I'm convinced 100% that all three projects will make, equip, and send. So that's a big check. Another is, all three of these projects are timely in that they're a response to a society that does have a lot of darkness in it, and especially for young people. And I have 3 fairly young kids myself, and I know many here do. Society sends so many messages that sort of subtly and not so subtly tell young people that a relationship with Christ and living as a disciple, it's not that important. There's so much other stuff you need to be paying attention to. And, that helps separate people from God. There's many more people here that can speak much more eloquently about that. But for me, again, as a fundraiser, is your project timely? Is what you're raising money for really addressing something that needs to be done now? And I think the answer is 100% correct. I thought about that when we heard St. Paul today talk about walking in the newness of life. And I think all three projects really provide opportunities for folks to be disciples and to walk in that newness of life. Another reason is all these projects are at least 2 for sure, and one I think you could argue, York Place, you could argue the same thing. They're so forward-looking. Every organization, I don't care if your organization saves souls or sells shoes. It really doesn't matter. If you want to be around and be strong for a long time, you have to look down the road. And one thing I know, you're not going to make and equip and send anybody 20 years from now if they haven't been engaged in the church, pretty much the whole time. Or at least your chances of doing so are so much better. So, even as a given church, as I've said, has a leaky roof, well, yeah, you got to fix that. Or if you've got a ministry that really needs help locally, you've got to address that and try to fund it if that's what's needed. But you also have to look down the road a ways, or you're not going to be the same organization that you were, and I don't mean that in a positive way. So the fact that all three of these projects look forward, I think is a terrific thing. There's another reason I'll share just in a minute why I think this is a great project. But so we've got to raise $10 million bucks. That's not a little bit of money. It's a lot. But what I can tell you is there's really two kinds of basic activities that we're doing now. We really just kind of started with the active solicitations. But there's two kinds of gifts we'll need. We'll obviously need a few gifts that are going to be in the 7 figures or very high 6-figure levels. I have found over doing this for 25 years or so that those conversations in particular are rarely, with notable exception, rarely something that just happens. You walk into a room, you ask for it, and you get it. Often there's some obstacles that have to be overcome. There's questions that have to be answered. There's a lot of consideration. Sometimes if you're dealing with families or foundations, it's a matter of, well, I think this is great, and if it was up to me, I'd sign the check today, but we really need to get these other people on board, and you're going to need to talk with them. So we've got about 3 of those 7-figure-ish conversations going right now. I think one of them we'll probably get an answer to pretty soon. The other 2 or 3 could be a while. We had one this week with a major foundation, and I don't mind telling you, we were told we're not going to be 7 figures, but we're interested in your project, and we're going to meet, and we're going to see what we can do. And I can tell you this, we did set the bar pretty high in that meeting. Whatever this organization does, it's going to be a lot more than if we hadn't come in and made a great case, talked about some of the reasons I just talked about why this is a great project. And those are the conversations that have to happen. The other kind of conversation, and this is where a lot of clergy will come in and also other leaders, we need a lot of gifts from people, let's say $5,000 a year for 5 years, total commitment of $25,000 and above, and I'll put some emphasis on the above. So many of those conversations will happen quicker, but this is not the kind of effort where there's just a list of names that is over on Marion Street in the Diocesan House, and we can just go call up people and they're ready to talk and they know what's going on. As folks have heard me say, we need people to open doors for us. Clergy have been great. We've developed a list of names that's probably about 120 people long of really qualified sort of, we call them in our business prospects, people that we can talk to. The trick is we're going to need clergy members, other leaders in different parishes to help us open those doors. So I've met, as I said, with about 40 folks. I'm going to be calling a lot more. I actually hope to meet with every rector in the diocese by the time I'm done here. And I guess my solicitation for everyone in this room right now is when I call, please, I understand that you've got those pressing needs, and I understand that you might be counting on certain folks in your parishes for other things that are needed locally. That's fine. We're not going to approach folks without your knowledge. Hopefully, we're not going to do it without your participation. And we're going to be very sensitive to the fact that we don't want anyone to make a gift to this campaign that's going to diminish their support to your respective parishes. In fact, we are explicitly asking folks not to do that. But here's the final reason I just think this is a terrific project. A lot of people who do what I do would say this is an obstacle because it makes things, it's going to make things just a little bit harder. But the very fact that we can't do this with just 2 or 3 or 4 people, on Marion Street just running this, I think is a good thing because it's going to require so many people opening up their hearts and minds to pull oars and pull them in a fairly coordinated way. And I just think anytime you do that, you're going to be a stronger organization from having done it. It's so much better when something is hard and it takes a lot of people on the same team to do it, as opposed to just sort of a surgical kind of operation where no one knows what the heck is going on. This will not happen unless the diocese absolutely pulls together and figures out how to make it happen with me, and I think we have a pretty good plan. But I will say, to me, that's just it makes it better. It's a great pleasure to work like that. I'm glad that we need you, and I hope that you'll pray on it and think of ways that you can make contribution. Opening a door to someone who gives $5 or $10 or more $1,000 per year is just a wonderful way to support your diocese and to support making and equipping mature disciples of Christ as we go forward. So as I said, we're just now beginning conversations with folks. We've had a few at the very high level, and now we're sort of going to continue those. There's a few more people at that level that we're trying to figure out how to approach. So if that generates any ideas, please do speak with me. And also, we're now beginning to make the rounds of folks who are probably going to expect phone calls from us, people who've been supportive in the past, but we're working simultaneously on the seven-figure level, as I said, and the relatively smaller level too. But that's my report, and your prayers worked because I'm still standing here, so. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. As I recalled in my sermon this morning, every congregation in this diocese has sponsored a visitation forum in which we engaged the subject of mature Christian discipleship. Acknowledging that not everyone here today was able to participate in one of those forums. The title of the forum in each case was Ambassadors of Reconciliation, Christian Maturity in an Age of Alienation. During the forum, each group of participants created 3 columns in a chart. The first and middle column listed characteristics and practices of a Jesus-centered life. The second, left-hand column, was a list of issues that divide us. The final right-hand column became a list of characteristics and practices that separate us from life in Christ and from each other. I'm grateful to Canon Alan Bentrip and Director of Communications Courtney Thompson for collecting the responses from all 60 congregations and putting them into order of frequency, the top word being the most frequent in each category, if you'll see this list summarizing. Our table conversations today invite us into a deeper engagement with our particular strengths. That is, those disciple characteristics we have taken most fully into ourselves. Our particular weaknesses, meaning those characteristics that God calls us to cast off, and our particular anxieties having to do with those issues within which we might strive to change the way we ourselves act when conflict is upon us. We have 40 minutes total for this session. Please identify someone at your table who might be willing to report briefly at a microphone at the end of the session in describing the nature of your table reflections. Before we begin, I just want to point out there are questions. The questions that you have on your table include a list of norms, choosing a timekeeper, that is, making sure that everybody has a chance to talk. Please monitor yourself that you are not monopolizing the time so that everybody gets a chance. Be respectful and non-judgmental regardless of what is said. This is a test. And listen. Listen closely to what others are saying. Keep with an open heart and an open mind. So we're going to begin with a few minutes of quiet personal reflection on the questions that you have before you. And as you look at the list, the 3 columns on the screen, in about 8 minutes, I will invite you into conversation at your tables. So we'll begin the 8-ish minutes now. Oh, we have a question. Yes. Jimmy, do you have extra question sheets for them? You got them? Oh, over here too. Wait a minute. Let's get all those questions. I'll tell you what, just keep your hand up. They'll get the questions to you, and the others of you can go ahead and begin that quiet time. If you haven't already begun table conversations, please do so. Plan to wrap up your conversations in about 5 minutes. If you can wrap up your conversations in about 1 minute, we'll begin a plenary conversation. Okay, I'd like us to end our table conversations and enter a time of plenary reflection. And there's no particular structure to this part of it, except that I'd like to hear from any of you who can report on the conversations at your table in ways that reflect kind of how this exercise has, what you learned, what insights might have been there for you. So we can just wait a minute, and whoever wants to come first. Bill Beckham.
This is not my favorite position to be in either, Bishop. I'm Bill Beckham.
Just channel.
I will. I will. And you know I have to do that a lot. I know. I go to Trinity Cathedral in Columbia.
Please be sure and speak directly into the mic. And do introduce yourself. They might not have heard you.
Yeah, my name is Bill Beckham. I'm a cradle Episcopalian. And I used to live with a guy who wore a shirt very similar to that.
He's the son of a bishop.
And the granddaughter of a bishop is here as well. Bishop Cole's granddaughter. We talked about a situation that a couple of us had when family members revealed their sexuality. And one was when my wife and I went to visit her cousin and her cousin's husband in Maryland. And they were members of the Church of Christ, a very strict church, even for Church of Christ. Their particular church was very strict. They had just found out that their son was gay. And we all went out to dinner. And my wife's cousin, the mother, started crying. And she said, "We're just confused. We don't know what we did wrong. We don't know where we could have changed things." And my response to them was, "Do you love your son?" And they both said yes. And I said, "There's nothing wrong with him. You love him, and he's going to be just fine." I didn't go into great detail about what I thought about everything going on in the world, but just that, she jumped up, came around, and gave me a hug. They have a wonderful, close relationship with their son right now, who is an entertaining, honest, and beautifully structured guy.
Thank you. I'm wondering if any of your tables ventured into that minefield of partisan politics. This is to the extent of being able to have a conversation. If you did, what I would want you to talk about is how you manage that in a way that different people could talk to each other. I think that's the question on a lot of people's hearts these days, is in this world of division, how do we talk to somebody who is on the opposite side? Microphone number 1.
Yes. Caroline Conley from St. Francis of Assisi in Chapin, South Carolina.
Thank you.
And I can totally, don't want to break the mic. Not time yet. I
That's
guess
all
I got
right.
everybody's
That's all right.
attention.
It's all good.
To go back a little bit, in 2016, I had a sinking feeling.
Stay right in front of the mic all the time.
Okay, I had a sinking feeling things were not going to go well. Come January, I still was very upset. Praise God, we had Father Manning, who, through several sermons, was able to help us all go beyond what we thought we couldn't get past. And he did this by reminding us that we were not putting God first. That there was a way that we all came together, and that was through Christ, and putting Christly ways and godly ways above political separations. And because we are a church of varying political beliefs and likes and dislikes, I wondered what in the world, until he started off slowly, just a little bit in one sermon, then a little more. And then I was like, wow, I get it. I see what I'm doing wrong. I see that we're coming together and that we're able to get through this. And God will get us through anything if we put him first. Okay, that said, we had a great table discussion. It really was not political. It was about relating to all of the columns, all of the words at some time in our lives. And we all had great stories to relate. We also said that that there is evil out there, and that we need to constantly and daily, as we are pushed and pulled by evil in many directions and being separated from God, that we have to remind ourselves to pray, to serve, and to love others where they are, where we are, and rise above, to be united in Christ, and to keep that as our number one thought. Amen.
Thank you. Sister Ellen Francis,
Yes, my table has said I have to come and tell this story. So
do introduce yourself.
I'm Sister Ellen Francis from the Order of St. Helena. And when I 11 years ago, the Order of St. Helena, all of our sisters moved to the South. And I had grown up in New York, lived in New York much of my life. And when I moved south, I met a man who was a consultant for the Order of St. Helena. And after I had been in the South a few months, he's made some anti-Muslim comments. And this was very distressing to me. I was married to an Iranian and lived in Iran for many years. And to me, Islam represents a warm, family, welcoming, hospitality. This was the story. This was my life experience of Islam. And so one day, one of my sisters got me together with this fellow, and we each told our stories. And I told him about my background, and he told me about being in a situation where he was very close to a terrorist attack. And in telling our stories, we had a deeper understanding of each other, and listening respectfully to each other made all the difference. And then I understood where his position was coming from, and I think he understood a little bit more about my position. And then we were able to work together in the coming years with respect. We did not talk about politics very much, however.
Thank you. Okay. I think we are running out of time. I just want to say that one of the comments I make to some of my colleagues in the House of Bishops from time to time about the Diocese of Upper South Carolina is that, yes, we have lost members due to some of the fights in the church, some of the folks who are upset about what the church has done, and we've also lost folks who have thought we weren't going fast enough in some areas. But the reality is that we are a diocese that is deeply reflective of the variety of views in the world today on pretty much every subject on that left-hand column in front of you. And the more I reflect on that and on the gift of that theological diversity within our church, the more I believe that those issues lose their toxicity when we remember that our primary call as disciples of Jesus Christ is to be in relationship with each other through Him. And anything any action that we take that drives us apart in terms of how we treat our neighbor is an action that breaks apart the body of Christ. We are going to disagree. Some things are more just than others, and yet every person who has an opinion about something has that opinion for a reason. And as Sister Ellen Francis so eloquently said, it's in hearing one another's stories that the edges around our views begin to soften in favor of the relationships that we have in Christ. I rejoice that I've come into a diocese and been serving a diocese that has wanted to stay together more than it has wanted to be apart. And I thank God for all of you and rejoice. Oh. Looks like one of our youth would like to say something. Please do, and then we need to stop.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Nixon from Christchurch, Greenville, and I'm talking on behalf of the DYLC committee. And so we got the discussion questions as well as y'all, and we found a particular calling to the second question, and that one of the things that we found ourselves always going back to is prayer. And so we always talked a lot about how we didn't really pray as much when we needed to, or when we wanted to, but in a time of need, and that's an issue because we need to pray always, and we need to ask God for help throughout everything. And so we found ourselves doing it when we needed it most, and that's what's kind of keeping us from having a full relationship with God, is having conversation with God, because that's what prayer is. And we need to pray more, because having conversation with our Father is so important, because what kind of relationship is it if you don't have any conversation? What kind of relationship is it if you can't talk to Him about everything and anything that you need or want to talk to Him about? Because that just wouldn't be right. So prayer was really the main thing that was holding us back, because we didn't talk to God like we should have. Thank you all.
Thank you. Wait a minute. Don't go just yet. Wait. I forgot to ask you your name.
Sam Nixon,
Sam Nixon, from what congregation?
Christ Church, Greenville.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on, and I want to recognize the Reverend Deacon Ann Pilot, head teller for this convention. Thank you for all that conversation, everyone.
Right, Reverend Sir. I have a report on the second ballot. Election 7 was held, and the University of the South Board of Trustee lay order was elected for Ms. Kirby Colson.
Congratulations, Kirby, and we will move on to the next thing. The chair, wait a minute, we have a, before we get into the discussion about the SOM, I'd like to make a motion. We have a couple of courtesy resolutions that we'd like to make. Now's the time to do that, Drew? We need a motion to make a small change because we have some guests here on a courtesy resolution who we wanted to be here for that, and they have to leave at 3. Is there a second? All in favor? Oh, let's go. Okay. Drew? Who is presenting those courtesy resolutions? Where are they? I got to get to the right page. What is it? Page 34. All right, I got it. Okay. Are Jay and Rock Rattery in the room? Great. I'm glad you're here. Whereas, thank you, Regina Rattery served as Convention Secretary for the Diocese of Upper South Carolina the better part of this past year, bringing her gracious gift of knowledge and expertise as it relates to the governance of the Episcopal Church. And whereas Regina faithfully served the Episcopal Church as the International President of the United Thank Offering, a dedicated member of the Episcopal Church Women, faithful deputy to numerous general conventions, and committed herself to years of ministry with the wider church. And whereas Regina participated in many diocesan ministries, quietly leading by example and selflessly equipping other saints for ministry. And whereas Regina devoted herself in a myriad of ways to a lifetime of congregational ministry at Our Savior Rock Hill and later at All Saints Casey, and whereas Regina's service extended beyond the walls of the church and into communities, local and throughout the world, mentoring and training leaders, and most importantly, whereas Regina lived a life as a devoted wife, mother, and friend to all, now therefore be it resolved that the clergy and people of the 97th Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Upper South Carolina, along with the 8th Bishop of the Diocese of Upper South Carolina, do hereby extend and proclaim our thanks, gratitude, and appreciation for her unwavering commitment to our endeavor to serve God in this place and time. Is there a motion to approve? All in favor say aye. Please let's stand up as we give this to her sons, Jay and Rock Rattery.
My brother's a little scared right now because he had the microphone at the funeral. And he's worried I might get the last word in, but I'm not going to do that to him. It is an absolute honor to be here today. As some of you may know, a couple weeks before my mom passed, she had the privilege of being awarded the Order of the Palmetto from the governor. And she was extremely touched. She had a chance to be awarded that in front of her friends, and she said that in all of her days, she never thought that she would be given such a prestigious award, having seen some of the people in her past given it. I can promise you today, if she knew that she had been granted this resolution, she would say that was even better than that. She absolutely loved all of her church friends. I thank all of you for praying for her, all the phone calls, the cards. She had some amazing one-on-one conversations that I was lucky enough to be witnesses with a couple of times. Her illness blessed my brother and I. And I just ask that you always keep her in your memory and just always keep this in mind. When life is down, just remember what Regina did. She faced it with grace and humility. She had a smile on her face, and she had her lipstick on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would also like to put on the floor a proclamation honoring the service of Bruce Carter. Whereas Bruce Carter served faithfully as the lay warden of the Midlands Convocation, sharing his skills in governance, administration, and communication, and whereas Bruce actively provided diocesan leadership by serving as an activist for Justice Ministries, a mentor to those in the vocational discernment process, and an educator through the former Diocesan School for Ministry, and whereas Bruce exemplified mature discipleship, dedicating his life as a reconciler in the church and world, mentoring children, serving as a civic leader, advocating comprehensive health care, and whereas Bruce was a loving husband to Judy, a father to Lisa and Happy, and a friend to many, and whereas all of us have been enriched by Bruce's witness and ministry among us, now therefore let it be resolved that the clergy and people of the 97th Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Upper South Carolina, along with the 8th Bishop of the Diocese of Upper South Carolina, do hereby extend and proclaim our thanks, gratitude, and appreciation for his unwavering commitment to our endeavor to serve God in this time and place. Is there I move that this resolution be approved. I need a motion. Second? All in favor? Aye. Great. Is Judy here? Judy Carter, please come forward.
Okay, now, one thing I want to say about Bruce, and this is the right place to say it. God love him, he was born Methodist. But his soul was Episcopalian. Praise God. Thank you, St. Martin's. You took him in and trained him up. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Mr. Bill Sandberg, Diocesan Treasurer.
I'll try. But for all of you who are not football fans as much as you are accounting fans, I have a better answer to the question that Father Newberger asked at the end of the treasurer's report. As I said, of course, our deficit in 2018 did not mean that we did not pay our bills. The statements that you were given weren't reflective of balance sheet changes, and the bills were paid, as you might figure, by writing checks or otherwise paying from the bank accounts and money market funds. I don't know what their balance was in 2018, but at the end of September of 2019, those two items on the balance sheet came to $900 and some odd thousand. They're kept high for the purposes of transactions and for covering any emergencies. So they were used exactly as they would be intended in order to cover the items that weren't met by the income received or the resources allocated in the budget of 2018. So everything was fine, and I also will remind you that the auditors said everything was just fine and dandy. Okay, moving along to the SOM for 2020. The overall theme of this is SOM is to bring spending back down to a level where it matches our resources without having to draw unduly on our endowment fund, so that the proposed spending for 2020 is a significant drop, a drop of about 5.8% from what we're spending this year, but it compares well to the amount that we actually spent in 2018. It's a 4% increase from what we spent in 2018, even though it's a 5.8% drop from what we were spending in 2019. The reason for this is partly the insufficiency of the income received from parishes and missions in response to the asking, and it's partly reflects DEC's, or the Standing Committee's, desire that we not dip into the endowment as a regular procedure for meeting what would be considered regular budget needs. You'll also remember that I said that the 2019 SOM had some one-time funds in it, a bit over $70,000, and those were indeed one-time funds. So that in order to keep things in balance for 2020, it was necessary to impose some reductions. How we settled on an estimate of revenue is maybe something worth commenting on. The controller, that was Anna McDermott at the time, the controller and I began early in 2019 to estimate the available revenue in 2020. So we were working a year ahead to try to prepare things. We looked at the effects of the 2017 tax reform, which are not yet fully understood in terms of the impact on charitable giving. We looked at reports from the Pew Trust on charitable giving, which show that there is a declining percentage of Americans and of American wealth being given to religious organizations. We looked at economic forecasts for 2019 and 2020. Remember that we were doing this starting in January and February of 2019. And we foresaw that there would be a slowing of the economy. There has indeed been. We didn't presume to say exactly how much, but we were pretty sure that it wasn't going to keep the rate of growth in 2018. Out of that, we arrived at the conclusion that the total of giving to the parishes and missions of this diocese would be flat. We projected it in 2020 to be at 99% or so of what was received in 2019. And we projected a continuation of a trend of reduced percentages of acceptance by our parishes and missions. That level of acceptance, that is how much a parish pledges in response to the asking, had been maybe a half dozen or 8 years ago in the 84-85% range and has declined to the low 80s. Putting together what we foresaw as a flattening or decreasing income to the parishes, we expected that their SNOIs, which are based on the 3-year average prior to the budgeting time, and their resources coming in were going to be moving in different directions. The SNOIs were based on better years, and as parish income drops in 2020, they're going to be matching their current resources for giving against what's asked of them based on their previous years of income. And so we thought that it was most prudent in budgeting to expect a bit of a decline in the money available from our principal income source, which is the giving by parishes and missions. This meant that a rather hard task fell to the commissions. Money is allocated to each commission, and then each commission further allots that to the various budget items under its domain. This unfortunately put commissions in a position of having to say no a lot more than they could say yes, or particularly of saying, no, we can't afford a new initiative, or no, we can't give you as much as you had last year, although we can continue giving something to you. It's, of course, not fun to be in a position of doing that as a commissioner or as a member of a commission. So I appreciate, as treasurer, their willingness to come to grips with that. It was a very difficult budgeting year in putting together the 2020 SOM. And I know that a lot of customary and quite often very worthy line items were either reduced or had to be sacrificed in order to meet our requirement that we stay in budget. By the end of the year, we got a shock in the insurance rate being charged for our clergy medical coverage, which increased by far more than we had expected. So that if you look at the SOM, you'll see that there is indeed a draw on the diocesan endowment portfolio of $225,000 that was necessary in order to maintain the levels of coverage that our clergy have been receiving and counting on for their medical coverage. It's not something that the DEC desires to make a regular habit of, but it was an expedient way, without tossing out the whole SOM and starting over, of providing continuity of benefits for the clergy while working with the framework of the SOM that we had developed in the 11 months or so leading up to that. And so at this point, I will be pleased to entertain questions, and because it's the commissions that make the decisions on line items under their authority, it would be helpful when we have a question addressing particular line items if the chair or a representative of the commission in question would speak to that commission's reasoning in making the allocation that it did. And Right Reverend Sir, I move that the 2020 Statement of Mission be adopted.
Since the statement of mission is presented from Diocesan Executive Council, it does not need a second. Before I open the floor for discussion, I'd like to remind clergy and delegates about the process for the Diocesan Statement of Mission and its development. Beginning in January, every congregation and diocesan ministry is provided the opportunity to request funding. The Statement of Mission Committee meets to review all applications and provide recommended block grants for each commission that in turn designates funding in their respective areas of ministry. Their work continues until a balanced budget is reached. The Commission on the Diocese provides a final proposal for funding to the Diocesan Executive Council at their September meeting. Upon approval, DEC, I'll call them, submits the final statement of mission to all clergy and delegates at the fall convocation meetings. After reviewing the statement of mission as approved by DEC, clergy and delegates are invited to submit any further recommendations to Diocesan Council 5 business days before convention. Since no recommendations were received by Friday, November 1st, the purpose of our exercise today is to discuss and vote on the proposed statement of mission. If there are comments or concerns presented during the discussion today, members of the Diocesan Executive Council will consider all feedback at their December meeting. The floor is open for discussion. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes per delegate. When you are recognized by the chair, it is important for you to state your name and parish prior to making your comments at the mic. The question has been called. The question has been called, so we have to deal with that. You're deferring that? Okay, please come to the mic.
My name's...
Is the microphone on? Why don't you go to microphone 2 over there? You can still check to see if you can get 1 working in case we need it. Is 2 working? There we go. Okay.
My name is David Clater, and I'm senior warden at St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Chester, South Carolina, home of the original, the one and only Martin Luther King Jr. Blues Festival. Brotherhood and the Blues is for everyone.
Okay.
And I'm here
I
to
love
address.
it, but let's hear.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
I'm a little different than Bill because I got to have some pop because that's part of, we're trying to draw people into the church. Okay, we got to have some pop. So anyway.
We do. We do. He's
We got to have pop. I want to address on the SOM, on the race and reconciliation, line 113. And also on the investment market value, September 30, 2019 line, 2023, 2029, 2030. And I really strongly wish that you would restore the funding to the Race and Reconciliation Committee. And I'm speaking from this dimension on it, is that last year was the first year that the Episcopal Church came on board with the Race and Reconciliation to be a sponsor of the Martin Luther King Jr. Blues Festival. I think if we listen to the entirety of all that was brought here today in the discussions, it's quite clear that the ideals and principles of nonviolence, peace, freedom, brotherhood, basically the ideals of Jesus Christ, be advanced. And this is one way that we advance is with the festival. And sometimes right now, these are the people are going through some rough times, okay? But as far as for the church, these should be our best of times. Okay, and so we need to invest in it. So I'm asking DEC if you would, please restore that, because I was coming here looking for a $5,000 sponsorship for this festival. And
your time is up, but we will send your recommendation to DEC at their December meeting.
Yes, and keep hope alive. That's all I want to say, keep hope alive. We got the message. As long as we're in Christ and believe in our message, it's all going to work out. The bottom line is going to be just fine.
Got it. Thank you. Any other comments? There being no more comments, I would accept a motion to...
Well, that's not really necessary. You could just go ahead and vote if there's nobody who wants to speak.
Calling the question. All in favor of ending discussion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All in favor of the 2020 Statement of Mission as submitted, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
I'd like to thank the aforementioned people, the commissions and so on, who struggled with this. I'd also like to thank the diocesan staff, who, as always, have been a big help in pulling the numbers together, and that would apply particularly to both of the controllers who served this year, Anna McDermott and Shonda Kelly. And I want to thank the members of the Midlands Convocation who give me a grilling every 3 months at the convocation meeting, so that nothing here today has particularly frightened me.
Thank you, Bill. I call on the Reverend Canon Jimmy Hartley to offer announcements.
Thank you, Bishop Waldo. Just a couple announcements as we're wrapping up this day. Please, if you don't mind, collect all the paper, products, things that are on your table to help expedite cleaning up our convention floor. Please recycle if at all possible. Anything like the yes/no questions, the tabletop pieces, the table numbers, please retain all those. Pencils, please, you can leave those and we'll put those up and use them next year as well. There'll be baskets in the back of the convention hall that you can put your name tags in. That'll help us to also be able to recycle these for next year. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We are scheduled for a 15-minute break right now. If someone wants to make a motion to skip the break. Second? All in favor of skipping the break? Opposed? The chair recognizes Ms. Angela Daniel, Chair of the Committee on Resolutions.
Thank you. I take it that means you wanted more time for me to read every resolution word by word for you. Yeah. Right, Reverend Sir, the Resolutions Committee has considered the resolutions presented to this convention and reports that they be dispatched as follows. In response to Resolution number 1, supporting the youngest among us, the Committee on Resolution recommends reject.
The floor is open for discussion on Resolution number 1. On all our resolutions this evening, our comments are limited to 2 minutes. Microphone number 1.
My name is Jim Newberger, and I am the developer of Resolution number 1. And I thank you for the time that you have put in considering the resolution. But I have some comments prepared for this convention and this diocese. I'd like to begin with a prayer. O Lord and giver of life, receive our prayers for this woman and for the child she has conceived, that they may happily come to the time of birth and serve you in all things, may you rejoice in your loving providence through Jesus Christ our Lord. This is the prayer in the Book of Occasional Services for the blessing of a pregnant woman. I'm blessed to have the opportunity to place before this convention this modest resolution that is intended, as its title suggests, to support the youngest among us. I want to thank the Committee on Resolutions for their support in editing my resolution, bringing it to the final form that you have before you. This resolution is intended to provide support for and address the needs that flow from the Episcopal Church's opposition to abortion as a means, as the committee pointed out, as a means of birth control, family planning, sex education, or any other reason of mere convenience. We are blessed that the Episcopal Church has voiced this position, but we recognize that there are many in our communities who do not want their pregnancies and choose to terminate them for just these reasons. This resolution is intended to provide, as it states, a kind, loving choice for everyone, the pregnant woman, the father of the unborn child, and especially for the child itself that is involved in just such a capricious abortion, just such an unwanted pregnancy. The Episcopal Church stands behind this resolution by negatively judging abortions carried out as a means of birth control, family planning, sex education, or any other reasons for mere convenience. By supporting, through this resolution, non-governmental organizations, pregnant women, their fathers, and the children will have a kind and loving and viable alternative to a capricious abortion. And we will stand with the larger church as they work to reduce the number of such abortions. The resolution on committee had a full page and was able to publish it.
We are limiting comments to 2 minutes. Please finish up. We're almost at 3 now, so continue.
I will carry on. The funds that this resolution seeks to redirect were originally approved by convention 14 years ago. So it's
your time is up now. Time is up. Thank you. Any other comments?
I'm Father James Lyon, the rector of the Church of the Good Shepherd in Columbia, and I want to
speak directly into the mic, please.
Yes, sir. I want to thank Father Newberger for writing the. Can you hear me? I'll get a lot closer, certainly. Okay. I wanted to thank Father Newberger for what he did. I want to thank the Committee on Resolutions for doing their very hard work in helping to illuminate some very serious concerns. But there's just one point I wanted to make with regard to the resolution, and it deals with the fourth concern that was brought up by the Committee on Resolutions, a concern about faith-based adoption agencies and their discriminatory adoption policies. And this is a real problem, the sort of discrimination we find with certain faith-based adoption agencies. Those policies deny love. Fortunately, we have a church body with whom we are in communion, of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Lutheran Family Services of the Carolinas provide adoption services, and they're very clear that in vetting prospective adoptive families, they do not discriminate on the basis of race, religion, color, gender, sexual orientation, age, national origin, disability, veteran status, or any other status or condition protected by law. I just wanted to make that clarification for the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the resolution on the floor? And we need to go to the microphone, please.
don't know if you were hoping that a female would speak to this issue, but I have been praying about whether to do so or not. And
You introduce yourself.
I am Mother Mia McDowell. I'm the vicar at St. Luke's Episcopal in Newberry. And I would like to address this because this is one of the issues that was in the mature discipleship piece that we have been talking about. And also, as a female who would never want to be in a position to have to make that decision, I think something that is fair and clear, as Father Lyons expressed with Evangelical Lutheran Church services, is necessary. There are all facets to fertility and lots of perspectives on this issue. And what I would like us to do is consider the fact that every person has to be respected. Those who would have an abortion and would never want to be in that situation, but also those who wish to raise their children but do not know how and do not have the resources or mentorship to raise a child that they neither expected. And I would like to see our diocese maybe reconsider this resolution written in a different way to where maybe all of the funds do not go to that, but some of them to give credence to those who do want to help the problem by education and resources, but also recognizing that that is where their work is going to, and not to say morally yes or no to that. I have no idea if I'm making any sense or not. It is just what I feel.
What I need to know is whether you're speaking in favor of or against, and if you're speaking, if you're seeking to make an amendment to the resolution.
I would make an amendment to the resolution to reflect.
Is it written down?
It is not. Does it need to be?
Yes. We need to have a written amendment so that we can have it for the record and know exactly what we're voting for.
Okay, and what format does it need to take, handwritten or typed out?
No, it's not in order if it's not written, so.
Okay, all right, I will do that.
Okay, but we can't do anything. We may get beyond that. I mean, we can't, you be quick.
That is okay, as long as it's stated that that is an option to the resolution.
I can't accept it that way.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Microphone number 1.
My name is Mitchell Smith, St. Martin's in the Fields Episcopal Church, Columbia, South Carolina. I rise against this resolution as the product of adoption, a child of an adopted person. I feel like the writing and the work done by the church in 1967 is sufficient, and I do not believe anything this body can do today will further enhance or hurt adoption services in the Midlands. I think that this is an ill-timed resolution, and I encourage us to vote it down and to think about that.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
My name is Todd Bridge, Church of the Cross.
Columbia.
Of Columbia, of course. Thank you. I would like to, I can't say that I'm for or against, but I just say let's table the motion and come back to it next year with some work.
Yeah. So are you moving to table then?
Yes.
Is there a second? All in favor of tabling this motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. That is pretty close. I think we need a vote. If we can have a vote with your placards. Yeah, if we table it, we cannot vote now to reject it or accept it. Okay, so all in favor of tabling, please raise your, let's just have everybody, just raise your card, whatever color. Let's see what the difference looks like. We got to count it. We got to count. So we need a count from the floor. If you keep your cards up. A green card says you want to table this motion. So a red card says you want to keep the conversation going. A red card means the conversation will continue. It will move us into voting for the resolution itself. Or against. Like voting on the resolution is what I meant by that, not for or against. Are some of you still confused? No, keep your cards up. Keep your cards up. I think. If you are voting with a green card, it means you are voting to table this resolution for further discussion later. If you are holding a red card, you're voting not to table the resolution and to continue discussion on the resolution, leading to a vote on a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the resolution itself. We are not voting on the resolution. We are voting on whether or not to table the resolution. Okay, we have a tally that those who vote not to table prevail with a vote of 122 for not tabling and 105 to table. So we continue the discussion on the resolution. Is there any other? Okay. Microphone number 1.
Hi, Meredith Blocker from St. John's, Columbia. I would like to speak in opposition. I think we need to vote, and I would like to call the vote so we can vote down this resolution. I don't think it is worded correctly.
So you are calling the question?
Yes, sir.
The question has been called, therefore we need to vote on the resolution. No? Oh, we need it. Sorry, I know. We are voting on whether or not to vote right away. Okay, so all in favor of calling the question and voting, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are now voting on the resolution itself. All in favor of the resolution, please say aye. This is the resolution as presented. All in favor of the resolution, aye. Just one? Is that right? All opposed to the resolution, say no. No. The resolution is rejected.
Right, Reverend Sir, in response to resolution number 2, the feast of William Alexander Geary, the Committee on Resolutions recommends adopt with amendment.
The floor is open for discussion.
I'm Tyrone Balls.
Wait, just one moment.
Yes.
She said as amended, but she didn't say what the amendment was. Did they have the amendment? Just a point of clarification. The amendment, when she said as amended, she is referring to an amendment that was made after, a friendly amendment that was made after submission, and therefore what you have is the amended resolution. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. So, microphone number 1.
I'd just like to say, I'm Tyrone Balls from Church of the Cross, Columbia, South Carolina, and I'd just like to say that I really support this resolution, because this gentleman, I had no idea of who he was until I went to confirmation at Trinity Episcopal, and there is a plaque there that talks about the bishop that was assassinated because he tried to bring along racial relations perhaps before his time, and how he struggled through his life. And perhaps we might not do a feast day, but the date that they've chosen, I think, is wonderful, and as an African American and South Carolinian, I'm proud that the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina has chosen to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Question has been called. All in favor of voting on the resolution? No? All in favor of voting on the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Now we're on the resolution itself, as amended. All in favor of the resolution as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Right, Reverend Sir, in response to resolution number 3, the age of adulthood, the committee recommends to accept.
The floor is open for discussion. Microphone number 1.
Hello, I'm Janet Rippey with Grace from Grace Church of Anderson, and I just would like to make a point of order that whoever is calling the question continuously, that they need to come to the microphone.
That is fair.
Thank you.
Discussion on the resolution at hand. Microphone number 2. If you're going to call the question, you got to come to the microphone.
Hello, there it is.
Go, got it.
Right, Reverend Sir, I move we end discussion and
Please,
vote
your name-
on the
name and parish,
My
please.
name is Ethan Cashwell from St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Greenville. I move that we call the question and vote on the resolution.
Thank you. Is there a motion, our vote is on ending discussion. All in favor of ending discussion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Now we are going to vote on the resolution itself. All in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
In response to resolution number 4 regarding the Episcopal Parish of St. Bartholomew's, I believe we have some people who want to speak to that.
No,
Before
no,
we do it?
no, we'll,
Okay.
I'll
The
explain it in a
committee
minute.
recommends adoption.
The floor is open for discussion. As a point of process, I want to say that I did one thing right and one thing wrong. I invited folks to come speak to it, but we did not pass that they would have a voice in the convention this morning. That has to be done at the beginning of convention. So what we are doing is we are going to ask if there's anyone to speak to it. I believe there is a representative from St. Bartholomew's. The standing committee? Huh? Standing committee wants to speak to it. And the floor is open for discussion, so please.
This is a resolution from the Standing Committee of the Diocese. It was passed at our December 2018 meeting, provisionally approving the conversion of the parish of St. Bartholomew's in North Augusta to mission status. It is now submitted to the convention for approval as required by our canons. Through an oversight, it was not submitted to the Committee on Resolutions in time to be included on the committee agenda. The decision to move a parish to mission status is one that focuses on the provision of resources and leadership development and oftentimes financial assistance that will support the congregation toward its vocational purpose. While initially the action may seem punitive, in reality the overarching and loving purpose is to move the congregation toward health and healing. In January 2019, Bishop Waldo appointed a mission committee to serve with their vicar, the Reverend Nancy Sakuda. In the 10 months since that time, this congregation continues to strengthen its Episcopal identity, embraces the stewardship of God's creation, and is committed to giving generously all that God has given them. They have grown in their commitment to be a reconciling community reflecting God's love, and as they strive to empower the ministry of the laity, to ensure all communicants have the opportunity to be fully engaged in the life of the congregation. This is all good news, and I invite all of you to keep the clergy, mission committee, and communicants in your prayers as we go forward.
Is there other discussion? They can't speak. However, what I want to say is that members of St. Bartholomew, raise your hand over there in the corner. These good people have driven here to be willing to speak to you about this. What I want to encourage is that you will seek them out shortly after this so that they can tell you something about their story, which is among the most inspiring stories I think I know about life in the church. Please be sure and come up to them and ask them because it's very important. So that means that we have the resolution on the floor to confirm the decision of the Standing Committee to put St. Bartholomew's into mission status, the resolution that was passed in December of 2018. Is there discussion? Microphone number 1.
And Susie Clausen, Church of the Good Shepherd, Columbia.
Bishop, this comes as quite a shock to a lot of us who have thought of St. Bartholomew as a thriving parish. Can you just give us a little background on this?
I think the best way to put it is that deep conflict arose from some members wanting things done a particular way, a way that was not the way the vestry had chosen to go, but various things that were literally undermining the very fabric of the community and its even its viability as a community. A number of actions were taken to protect the community from some of what was it was the most extreme case of this that I have literally ever seen, and it included people stalking people in the congregation, and it's very serious. There's some of this that I don't feel comfortable saying at a microphone, but I will simply say that what this group of people has done is to say we want to be, we are going to be, we need to be reduced to mission status so that we can rebuild in a new way. And that was what inspired that change. It was in complete collaboration with the vestry and rector of St. Bartholomew's. In the course of I would say probably about 20 people have moved to a different congregation across the line in Georgia. The current group of parishioners has focused on mission, on Christian formation, on life in the Spirit, on building a fellowship among themselves that has been truly one of the most inspiring things I have seen, and being able to stand on who they are and to say we are St. Bart's, and it's a vast majority of the congregation that has done this, and to say we are St. Bart's, and this is who God is calling us to be in this community at this time, and I think that you'll get some great stories from them. I really wish that we had given them seat and voice at the beginning, because I'd love for you to hear from them. But please, I tell you what, if you guys want to gather in the corner, stay in the corner over there when we finish, go there, and you can get a lot more detail. But I don't know if that is sufficient detail for you or not. But it was definitely a collaborative decision among a lot of folks, with many visits out to North Augusta for that conversation. There wasn't even anything remotely punitive about it. It was totally a decision that was made for the sake of mission and vitality in the congregation, and they have shown that that's exactly what they've done with what we went with. So. Microphone number 1.
Right Reverend Sir, Kelly Wilson from Christ Church in Greenville. I just have a question for clarification. If they were still in parish status, we haven't voted them to mission status yet. I'm wondering why they don't have voice and vote if the people here were voted as convention delegates.
These are not delegates.
They have nobody here that is delegates?
The folks who drove up, we have some delegates from St. Bart's here. Are they interested in saying a word? Any of y'all want to come up to the mic? It'd be nice to hear from you. Pull the mic down so you can.
This is not what we had chosen. My name is Natalie Black.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Natalie Black, and I go to St. Bartholomew's Episcopal Church. I'm a delegate and have been a member for 16 years. That's okay. I can tiptoe. Thanks. This is not something that we would have chosen for ourselves, but thought that this was the best way that we could recover and renew ourselves. We are not anybody less than what we were before, and we would love to talk to you one-on-one about what happened. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have these folks over here, and we have these folks over here. So you got a lot of folks you can check in with. So thank you. Anyone else? So our vote on the floor is to confirm the decision of the Standing Committee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you, and bless you, people of St. Bartholomew's.
Right, Reverend Sir, this concludes the business of the Committee on Resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more proclamation resolution that I want to submit to you, the proclamation of appreciation. Whereas the Reverend Harrison McLeod, Rachel Clark, Karen Walker, Donald Duncan, Jim Cothran, Kevin Mertens, and the clergy, staff, and people of Christ Church Episcopal who supported the work of convention have served as gracious hosts to all members of the 97th Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Upper South Carolina, and whereas the numerous volunteers at Christ Church have given generously of their time and talent, assisting the execution of details at this convention, and whereas the Convention Committee, under the direction of our Convention Secretary, Nora Grimble, and the staff of the Diocesan House have worked diligently to make this a well-ordered and efficient convention, and whereas Canon Myra Garnes, Canon for Youth and Young Adult Ministries in the Diocese of Long Island, Mr. Roger Stinson, Ms. Claudia Cox, Mr. Jim Martin, Ms. Brenda Martin, Dr. Cody Fuller, Ms. Anne-Marie Jones, and the Reverend Dr. John Zellner, the Baptized for Life team from St. Philip's Greenville, Morgan and Lena Lee, members of Trinity Cathedral, the Reverend Deacon Fergie Horvath, seminarian at Virginia Theological Seminary, and the Reverend Furman Buchanan, rector of St. Peter's Greenville, have given of their experience and wisdom in their keynote and workshop. Whereas the Diocesan Youth Leadership Committee and campus peer ministers have participated in, assisted with, and energized this gathering with their presence. And whereas the Order of the Daughters of the King have held this body in prayer throughout our work and deliberations, now therefore be it resolved that the clergy and people of the 97th Convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Upper South Carolina do hereby extend and proclaim our thanks, gratitude, and appreciation for their inestimable contributions to our endeavor to serve God in this place and time. Is there a motion to approve? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Not a one. Harrison, please come forward. Here you go. Thank you. Oh, no, I see. Okay. The chair recognizes the Reverend Jack Hardaway, the Reverend Gary Eichelberger, and the Reverend Mike Flanagan.
Right, Reverend Sir. The Committee on Courtesy and Hospitality, after multiple meetings, planning retreats, visioning sessions, misplaced agendas, drafts, revisions, and general procedural chaos, has concluded its business, and we have approved several resolutions.
The first is that it's hard to get three priests to agree on anything other than agree that where there are three priests, there are four opinions, and a fifth of something else, which was unfortunately absent.
The second is that whoever nominated us to agree on something has a sick sense of humor.
The third is that we have indeed had a convention. And it's been a grand occasion.
And then the fourth is that there are many people to be thanked,
especially us.
We thank the Convention Planning Committee,
including me,
for their hard work of preparing for this grand event. We thank the deans of our convocations for assisting with the nomination process,
including me.
We thank all those who served at our convention Eucharist.
Including me.
And we thank those nominees who offered themselves for service to this diocese.
Including me.
And me.
And me.
We thank the clergy and staff of Christ Church for their gracious hospitality, for the delicious lunch, for the semi-cool environment, and the semi-adequate parking.
We thank the presenters for our Leadership Day, reminding us that we are indeed baptized for life and that we need to practice our discipleship at least 10,000 times before we are mature.
And then we thank the Daughters of the King for their prayers. We are pretty sure that they work because we are able to get out of here before kickoff. And that the bishop never had to bang his gavel too loudly.
And would anyone we forgot to thank please stand up? Yeah, see the youth presence, they didn't stand up. I'm surprised. We want to thank the youth and Canterbury members for their assistance in the voting process, pencil pushing, paper shuffling.
Finally, we thank the Committee on Courtesy and Hospitality for the witty banter, well-produced presentation. We agree that this convention would have been much less grand were it not for our hard work.
Right, Reverend Sir. On behalf of our committee and the clergy of the Foothills Convocation, two of us are very thankful, and one of us is semi-grateful, for the opportunity to serve. So with no further agreement, this concludes our reports.
The chair recognizes Mr. Kirby Shealy, member of the Board of Trustees, Heathwood Hall, Columbia.
Right, Reverend Sir, on behalf of Head of School Chris Hinchy, Chair Margaret Wilcox, and the entire Heathwood Hall Board of Trustees, it gives me great pleasure to invite the 98th Annual Convention of the Diocese of Upper South Carolina to the banks of the Congaree River, to the campus of Heathwood Hall Episcopal School for the weekend of November 6 and 7, 2020.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the Reverend Canon Drew Hazel, that's the Bishop's Convention Officer.
Right, Reverend Sir, I am pleased to report that all business on the agenda for the 97th Annual Convention of the Diocese of Upper South Carolina has been dispatched by this convention.
I reiterate my appreciation to Christ Church, the rector, staff volunteers for their warm hospitality this weekend, and my profound gratitude to Diocesan House staff. Their dedication and hard work made Leadership Day and Convention possible. As I call your name, please come forward from my staff. Mr. Frank Ballard, the Reverend Canon Alan Bentrup, Ms. Tracy Foreman, the Reverend Canon Jimmy Hartley, the Reverend Canon Drew Hazel, Ms. Cynthia Hendricks, Ms. Caitlin Kinney, Ms. Mariella Watson, and Ms. Courtney Thompson, and Ms. Shanda Elliott, Shanda Kelly. Sorry. Thank you all. I'm going to stand up for them. Thank you. I also want to recognize Mr. Jesse Schaefer, who is serving as our executive director of the campaign, the Centennial Campaign. Jesse, are you still here? There he is. Thank you. And the Reverend Susan Heath, coordinator for the South Carolina Bishops Public Ed Initiative. Y'all, we're not quite adjourned. And finally, thanks to all of you who've worked to address this business. Before we adjourn, though, let's sing. You got a hymn in your booklet. It's on the screen. Okay. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my heart, it is Thine own. It shall be Thy royal throne. Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King. Take my intellect and use every power as Thou shalt choose. Take my will and make it Thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee.
Welcome to the 97th Diocesan Convention. As we're in the process of getting everybody registered, please know that there are a couple things. The first is that we're going paperless this year as the 96th Diocesan Convention asked us to. So bear with us as we sort of learn this process together. One thing that you might want to take note of is the Wi-Fi access. It's up on these screens. Also, you'll see little tents on your tables that give you the link to our diocesan convention page, and then from there you'll be able to download or open all the convention manual, what you would normally get when you with your big reams of paper that each one used to get. There's also a QR code if you know how to use that or like to use that. That'll give you direct access to all of our convention stuff. Okay. There also is 2 ballots on the table for people to share. That's for just the voting tables only. So just note that those are on your tables as well. Lastly, there is a forum for all the nominations, resolutions, and proposed changes that will be happening during our convention today. That's going to be in room 103. So if you go right out the front door of the gym, and then to the left, there's a small hallway with 2 classrooms. 103 is the classroom where the forum will be, and that begins in about 15 minutes. Thanks.